Hello and welcome. My name is George Fayer. I also go by nicknames like Neko Vermillion, as can be seen in the channel name, which will be up there or down there. And it's going to be a video where I talk about music. And there's a lot to talk about, but due to the sheer volume, I'm going to split this into two parts. I have a 7-page script I've written here, but I'm also going to go off script here and there because of certain things I found out ever since I've finished writing this script. Anyways, um, Anyway, the video is going to be about music and the people who are involved in music, those who are inspired by music, um, as well as people like composers, performers, those who do reinterpretations, covers, remixes, and arrangements. Um, and I am someone with a huge musical taste. Um, one look for me and you can already have some idea of what I do listen to, such as Iron Maiden, Hollywood Undead, Death Clock. But then as I go down the list, you'll see some things that you probably wouldn't expect someone like me to listen to, such as Gorillaz, Bellanova, Skillet, Angela, and The Pillows. And this coming off of the anime soundtrack of Fooly Cooly. And of course, speaking of soundtracks, there's also soundtracks of, for example, Spider-Man the Musical, the film Labyrinth, and the video game Mass Effect. So I do have a huge, diverse interest when it comes to music, and I look all over the place for the kinds of music I enjoy. More on some of that later. Now back on script. So anyways, my perspective that I present isn't just some random assumption or personal experience. I do also listen to various analysis, essays, and similar videos by people like Rick Beato and Ben Sage as two examples. Some things I agree with, some things I disagree with. Now, there are a lot more I can put for acknowledgments, but I'm gonna save that for the video description because that could bloat this video out too much, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to blow either part out, rather, because it's gonna be part 1 and part 2 is gonna be, you'll see. Anyway, with that said, I also apologize for instances of immature on my part because there are some people who have been skeptical of certain things and I tend to react in an immature manner, so taking this time to apologize for that as well. Anyways, as to why I tend to get worked up, it's because there's a lot of arguments when it comes to the subject of music. The safest such to reference are when people who are not listening to certain songs because they prefer the music that is sung by those who have worked for Disney, as an example. Not a single problem with Disney, as many of the people who perform for Disney I do respect. It does help me to come to many conclusions, not just the various essays and analysis I've heard, but also these arguments I've come across. Many people have a negative perspective of modern music. Many rely solely on broadcasters, from radio to networks. Some do it due to habit and gimmicks. Some expect all popular music to be present on the mainstream. And yeah, as surprising as it sounds, not every song that is popular is mainstream. I'll get into that in a bit. Some are simply bored or curious. Broadcasters are just convenient. And then there's the fact that a lot of people put heavy value into what the mainstream does, oftentimes neglecting what else exists in music, which includes pop music. And I know someone's going to be scratching their head, but wait a minute, isn't all pop music in mainstream? Not really. For example, there's this. So that's Bad Apple featuring Namiko. Very popular song, very much loved to the point that a lot of people have done covers of that song in their own arrangements. And Bad Apple is itself an arrangement of a song from a video game. So yeah, that is something that's created by gamers that is hugely loved. And while CNN has done a story on song, it was popular enough for CNN to talk about. For some reason, it doesn't get much mention when it comes to everything else mainstream, and that is the reality of it. And I know that's going to strike some people as odd. No, I'll say that for acknowledgement, because like I have seen like various TED talks about this and TEDx talks, and I know some people are going to roll their eyes, but sometimes in order to have a better understanding of the world, you have to look outside of your bubble. And as weird as it sounds, even though I do love the pop music like Bad Apple, at the same time, something like that is outside of the norm for mainstream music. And mainstream music actually does lie outside my bubble. And oftentimes it's because of certain things. Anyways, get back on the topic, on the script. So, well, that is that when it comes to the popular music. In the meantime, there are many big names in music, the various big name producers and distributors and the like, and they will invest in older music. And just the same, such companies when such companies invest in newer music or newer talents, oftentimes it's for the purpose of marketing. Of course, there are some exceptions, such as certain decisions by Sony and Universal, which and yeah, I'm gonna actually come back to that in part 2. But yeah, some companies like Sony Music and Universal Music have at least tried something different. But outside of those companies, there's a lot of investing in the older music and not so much the newer music, unless it's for the purpose of marketing. But yeah, exceptions aside, broadcasters will typically market to a specific audience. Hence why Bad Apple doesn't get playtime, despite being a popular song, despite being pop music. As a result, many who aren't marketed towards may not hear the music they would enjoy. This seems to me the most likely reason there is a negative perspective of modern music. I mean, there are the brick and mortar shops, but those are limited by what copies are available to sell. Just the same, there is online various sites and services. However, most sites and services will recommend remixes of approximately 40 seconds, which are often looped and extended for a runtime of 2 or 3 minutes. Now, some say it's due to short attention spans, though some originals, such as songs from the Shangri-Las, tend to be shorter than the music that's remixed from the Shangri-Las. And surprisingly enough, the originals tend to have more variety, more complexity, or at least something that makes them stand out, as opposed to the remixes, which tend to be very cookie cutter. Now, of course, though, there are some interesting explanations from some people, such as Colin Morris, one of those people whose TEDx talks I've watched, had actually talked about this. Something interesting, which is that the music of the mainstream does get simple. It is simplified, and a lot of people just love listening to simple music. And that's the thing. And there's, of course, many reasons for this, things such as mere exposure effect. The more you listen to it, the more you're familiar with it. And for a lot of people, they enjoy something more when they're familiar with it. And just the same, there's also the fact that repetition can reduce anxiety. However, there's also other curious things. This I got off of the website psychology.com, psychologytoday.com. An article called "Why People Get Bored" by Tema Ehrenfeld. I am apologizing. I'm not good with names. Who has also referenced a Dr. Irving Biederman. Basically, a new experience will stimulate chemical releases such as opioids. Once you had the experience, neurons take over the job, freeing other neurons for other tasks. And so because there's less of the opioids, less of the dopamine, the same experience over and over, or even some sort of repetition, ends up becoming boring, monotonous, tedious, and even at times redundant. And while there are certainly those who enjoy the repetition and the simplicity, especially when it comes to modern music, there are also those who cannot enjoy that because there is something that just they find dull and uninteresting. And that's not to say that everyone hates on the repetition. I will admit that there's a lot of songs that I do listen to that have repetition in them, such as, of course, the previously mentioned Bad Apple. That is a fairly repetitive song, but it also has its moments that basically breaks apart the monotony and ends up breaking up the repetition. And oftentimes it's those parts, such as with Bad Apple, it's moments where it's instrumental. It for someone who doesn't like the repetition, it grabs the attention. Another good song to reference would be from an old band called Forbidden of 403, who had those songs like Southern Cross and Northern Lights. Southern Cross is especially very repetitive, but that repetition does get broken up with soft moments where the singer is singing very softly with piano playing. And I'll be honest, I do tend to forget the repetitive aspect of Southern Cross, but that moment with the soft vocals, there's a unique beauty to it among the intensity and the rapid playing that makes Forbidden of 403's Southern Cross sound beautiful and interesting. So even though there is repetition that obviously those who want simpler music would enjoy, there's also that quiet moment for those of us who want something different can enjoy. Of course, though, there's also the matter of people just not caring about music at all. One of the things that Rick Beato points to. He's inclined to say that video games may be a part of it. I obviously disagree because, such as with Bad Apple, Bad Apple isn't the only song out there that's influenced by video games. There's also a lot of other people who create interesting music. I'll go into that in the next video. But he does have a point that there are people who, like with Call of Duty, for example. There's no music that plays. There's almost no music that plays when you go into multiplayer, especially with the Modern Warfare trilogy. There's no real music in multiplayer. You have the music that starts up, but that's it. But when the timer round's going down, it'll play music again. Those of us who actually pay attention to the audio will actually know, okay, this is a cue that we need to hustle or we need to move or whatever the case may be. But just the same, there's also the single player campaign, which tends to play out a lot like a movie. And a lot of times it not just makes great use of music, but it also makes great use of science as well. One of the pivotal moments with, especially Modern Warfare 2 with the DC invasion mission. There's a lot more I can say, but I think that's about it. I think I'm going to do a little follow-up more on those who don't pay attention to music. So yeah, that's what I'll do next before going to part 2. So for this video, I am George, aka Neck of Vermilion, and I thank you for watching.